Hi, I'm Andrew Phelps, Director of the Oregon Office of Emergency Management, and welcome to our weekly watch report. I'm joined this week by a very special guest, Tom Roberts. He's the Emergency Management Director for Umatilla County out in Eastern Oregon. Tom is joining us from the county, standing out there enjoying some liquid sunshine. This is a very momentous occasion for Tom and the folks in Umatilla County in Eastern Oregon. We are marking the 1 year anniversary of their federal disaster declaration that really kicked off what became a historic year in Oregon in terms of disasters and disaster declaration activity. Tom, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome, Andrew. I appreciate you marking the occasion and reminding us of all the chaos we've been through in the last year.
It's certainly been a challenging 12 months, and it really all kicked off in a lot of ways in the flooding in Umatilla County, Union, and Wallowa County. We received, of course, a federal disaster declaration with public assistance and individual assistance, meaning individuals and homeowners and families that were displaced received some assistance from the federal government, which is fairly unusual for our disasters. But Tom, can you briefly set the stage for us? What were you looking at when the flood started last February in 2020?
So it was one of those events that kind of took us by surprise. It was very fast moving. In fact, I got the call in the early hours and went up to a residence up off the East Fork of the Walla Walla River, uh, indicating that there was some high water and some potential flooding up there, which at this particular location is not an uncommon occurrence. We see high water at this spot on a regular basis. And by the time I got up there, um, which was out of cell service and got back into cell service, we were already experiencing individuals that were isolated on little patches of islands and needed to be rescued and stuff in the rest of the county down the Umatilla River. So we immediately made our way back and activated the Emergency Operations Center. It was a wall of water really fast.
It was a really incredible couple of days seeing what the county was experiencing. I know the National Guard affected dozens and dozens of rescues, as well as your local first responders out there doing water rescues. Uh, Clearly, there was one fatality associated with the flooding, and as the waters
Yes.
began to recede, well, that's when the recovery started. How Tom, would you say the recovery is going a year in?
So behind me is one example. This is the footbridge at the city of Umatilla across the Umatilla River near the mouth of the Columbia at the Columbia. And this particular bridge was impacted first during flooding 10 months earlier. That was our initial disaster declaration, losing one span of the bridge and knocking out critical infrastructure to a piece of the community, which is just off screen from me up the hill. To make matters worse, then, as we're going through the recovery process from that first disaster, we encountered this next disaster, which was an even larger scale, and it took out most of the rest of the bridge and what remained of that infrastructure was still in place. Speaking with the city of Umatilla today, things are progressing, albeit as with any recovery effort, it's a slow moving process. But they are in the early phases right now of finalizing the engineering work so they can start rebuilding this bridge, which serves as a critical access point from the South Hills side of town into town for most of the high school. And it also has located within it, and I don't know if you can see the picture, one of their critical water main pipes that was severed in the first event.
Yeah, I remember coming out in both 2019 and 2020 and viewing some of the damage and the impacts. And a lot of folks don't realize there's a lot of critical infrastructure, utility lines, water lines, sometimes even natural gas lines tied into these bridges. So when you lose a bridge, it's more impactful than just a transportation route that we're losing. Uh, as you continued to respond and initiate the recovery process, within a couple of weeks, COVID hit. How has that impacted your community's response and the pace of your recovery?
I think we were one of the first in the nation to receive a disaster declaration and then a pandemic to deal with on top of it. I know there were several other states and communities that ultimately have had to contend with that, including many of our valued friends over in the remaining portion of Oregon later on with the wildfires. However, it's one of those interesting dynamics where suddenly we're dealt with Zoom meetings versus in person on-site visits. We're dealing with state, local, and federal governmental offices that are closed, or individuals are trying to telework from home. And so it was slowing the process, and it took us a while to get our feet underneath of us and really get that battle rhythm down that was necessary to continue marching forward. So that's one of the things that's kind of slowed our progress in the recovery from this last event.
I know we had over 100 families receive assistance from FEMA through the individual assistance program, and obviously the federal recovery dollars are moving through their process. We know it's always challenging when you're working in waterways and the natural environment to ensure you're not causing further harm as we work to repair and rebuild our infrastructure. But as we look ahead and we look at things like risk reduction and how we can leverage mitigation funding, what do you see on the horizon for Umatilla County? Again, back-to-back federal disaster declarations in 2019 and 2020, standing out there today in the rain. What does risk reduction look like for you all in Umatilla?
Honestly, Andrew, when I took this position back in 2016, and I grew up in this area, I took it with the understanding that disasters don't happen very often out here. I hadn't seen a major disaster other than the single operational period windstorm sort of thing along the pileups on the freeway, sort of stuff in my lifetime living out here. And then suddenly, within a few years, we have multiple stacked disasters. So this has been a little bit of an eye opener. It's going to be a game changer moving forward in our planning initiatives. We have an unprecedented number of individuals from all of our special districts, our municipalities coming forward to assist us with the update to our natural hazard mitigation planning. That's currently taking process. We're expecting the drafts to be finalized and pushed up to OEM soon. And in that plan is a whole lot of very progressive ideas that are now central to what we now know is going to be the new norm moving forward as far as the potential for natural disasters out here that really before weren't on our radar.
It's a really important perspective, Tom, that we don't look at the years that we've had 2020, 2019. We don't look at them as anomalies. We look at them as indicators of what's to come. And I'm glad to hear that Umatilla County is taking that approach. Certainly your hazard mitigation plan becomes a really robust document that has stakeholder input from different sectors and different levels of government to help make your county better able to withstand the shocks and the stressors of future disasters. And I'm glad to hear you all are doing that work. Before we kind of wrap up here, we talk a lot in emergencies about lessons learned. And now 5 years into the job, Tom, you're one of our more experienced emergency managers in the state with the disasters you've had. Maybe we won't call them lessons learned, but what are some learnable lessons, perhaps, from your experience over the last couple of years for other emergency managers that might be facing the same challenges?
So one of the things that really stood out to me post uh, disaster, as far as this last go around with our floods, was that uh, in the heat of the moment, I had a lot of help. I had representatives from, I believe it was 13 different counties in my emergency operations center right there helping out, bringing their knowledge set and their subject matter expertise to the table, which really helped us in the moment. And when we look back on that now post fire disaster, that was critical because we learned not only what works and doesn't work and had an opportunity to apply it real world during our flood event, but also take that home to some of our locations and to develop some opportunities moving forward for assistance between our offices. It was probably, in my opinion, better than holding an annual conference as far as bringing people together and really working an issue, one that is going to have a legacy moving forward. I do honestly believe.
I'm glad to hear that, and we certainly don't want to plan on disasters as a way to bring folks together. But as you noted, emergency management is predicated on strong, solid relationships, and I'm really glad to see that those relationships uh, came out in force to support you in the county and your neighbors during what was a really challenging time and a pretty hectic time, uh, and a harbinger of what was to come for us in 2020.
Right.
And I think, Tom, last thing. We as emergency managers deal with a lot. There's the fiscal impacts of our disasters and recovery dollars that come in and coordinating different agencies, doing all of that in this environment with COVID where you don't have that face-to-face connection all the time with our partners, and just the stress and pressure of the job. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm spending a lot of time in a warehouse right now, managing a lot of the logistical lift
Yeah.
locally for our emergency support function 8 public health partners and our hospitals. predominantly because that's what needs to happen. And in our world, that's what we do. We make things happen. And so I'm doing good. My back's a little sore from it, but as I pointed out recently to one of my comrades, in the world of emergency management, um, we work within the National Incident Management System, the Incident Command System, and we are individuals who understand that that is a scalable, moldable um, uh, uh, process. So basically, if what they need from me isn't to be the tip of the pencil, but rather to be the logistics guy, that's what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter if it's a flood or a fire or what it is. We're going to make things happen, and regardless of how things look in the moment, um, we're going to take and mold that and make it what it needs to be the most efficient and effective method possible to serve the citizens of our community the most efficiently. So that's the bottom line. It doesn't always go textbook, but it goes down the best way we can make it happen with the resources we have at bear at the moment.
Well, Tom, you're doing a fantastic job taking care of your community. I hope you're also able to take care of yourself a little bit and take breaks and uh,
I just
maybe.
I just had a grandbaby a week ago, so
Oh,
we are taking a little bit of time to welcome a new member of the family. So
congratulations, and again, an indication that even in the face of disaster, life goes on, and
yep,
uh, new exciting things can emerge. Well, Tom, I
absolutely,
appreciate you spending some time with me this morning. We spent a lot of time together over the last few years touring some pretty gnarly disaster sites out there in Umatilla County, and I'm glad to see that recovery is progressing again. Nothing moves as quickly as we like in the recovery process, but we need to remember we're doing things the right way, maximizing some of those federal investments, and preparing our communities to be more risk reduced as we move forward and face additional
absolutely.
challenges. Thanks so much, Tom. Anything else you want to share with our viewers before we.
Just a shout out to all of my comrades in the emergency management world, regardless of what title you hold, especially those that were impacted by all the rest of the disasters we've had in 2020 and moving forward. Just hang on. The light is at the end of the tunnel. We will work this together, and let's just stay strong, stay positive, and keep doing what we do best.
I do want to note before we sign off, it was really something to come in after the flooding. The governor came out, some elected officials came out, Dolph Demon, our federal coordinating officer, came out to visit, and to walk into your emergency operations center and see emergency managers from around the state moving paper and filling out forms and making requests for assistance. And it was really nice to see that. You don't see that very often, fortunately, because we don't have those big disasters, but it was nice to know when the bell rang, folks came running to help.
Absolutely, and we don't even stop there. We went beyond the emergency managers to our volunteer organizations, the American Red Cross, Team Rubicon, some of our faith-based organizations, with the Adventist Church and so on. So a big shout out to every one of them that came and helped us. I know I can't name them all just off the top of my head, but everybody came together to do their part and really provide us with the level of assistance we need. And I know it wasn't perfect, but we have and will continue to do the best we can for everybody to bring normalcy back, whether it be from floods, fires, or pandemic.
That's well said, Tom. And to echo that point, disasters don't affect one jurisdiction, one level of government, one discipline. It really takes everyone to pull together to respond to and recover from those bad days. So thanks for joining us, and thank you all for tuning in to
Yep.
the Watch
Thanks for
Report.
having me.
You bet. Thanks, Tom. And for those watching, until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other.